Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We will be reading from Canto 3, Chapter 23, verse 43. Once again, Canto 3, Chapter 23, verse 43. Prekshayitva bhuvo golam पत्याय यावन् स्वसंस्थाय भाव आश्चर्यं महायोगी स्वश्रमाय न्यवर्तत प्रेक्षयित्वा भुवो गोलं पत्न्याय यावन् स्वसंस्थाय भावाश्चर्यं महायोगी स्वश्रमाय न्यवर्तत. Word by word. Prekshayitva, after showing, Bhuva, of the universe, Golam, the globe, Padnyai, to his wife, Yavan, as much, Swa Samsthaya, with its arrangements, Bahu Ashcharyam, full of many wonders, Mahayogi, the great yogi Kardama, Swa Ashramaya, to his own hermitage, Nyavartata, returned. Translation. After showing his wife the globe of the universe and its different arrangements, full of many wonders, the great yogi Kardama Muni returned to his own hermitage. Once again, after showing his wife the globe of the universe and its different arrangements, full of many wonders, the great yogi Kardama Muni returned to his own hermitage. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. All the planets are here described as Gola, round. Every planet is round, and each planet is a different shelter, just like islands in the great ocean. Planets are sometimes called Dvipa or Varsha. This earth planet is called Bharat Varsha because it was ruled by King Bharata. Another significant word used in this verse is Bhava Ascharyam, many wonderful things. This indicates that the different planets are distributed all over the universe in the 8 directions, and each and every one of them is wonderful in itself. Each planet has its particular climatic influences and particular types of inhabitants, and is completely equipped with everything, including the beauty of the seasons. In the Brahma Samhita 540, it is similarly stated. Vibhuti Bhinnam. On each and every planet, there are different opulences. It cannot be expected that one planet is like the other, is like another. By God's grace, by nature's law, each and every planet is made differently and has different wonderful features. All such wonders were personally experienced by Kardama Muni while he traveled with his wife. Yet he could return again to his humble hermitage. He showed his princess wife that although he was living in the hermitage, he had the power to go anywhere, to everywhere, and do anything by mystic yoga. That is a perfection of yoga. One cannot become a perfect yogi simply by showing some sitting postures, nor by such sitting postures or so-called meditation can one become God, or as is being advertised. Foolish persons are misled into believing that simply by some caricature of meditation and sitting postures, one can become God within 6 months. Here is the example of a perfect yogi. He could travel all over the universe. Similarly, There's a description of the Rasa Muni, who also traveled in space. Actually, the perfect yogi can do that. But even if one can travel all over the universe and show wonderful feats like Kardama Muni, he cannot be compared to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose power and inconceivable energy can never be attained by any conditioned or liberated soul. By the actions of Kardama Muni, we understand that in spite of his real immense mystic power, he remained a devotee of the Lord. That is the real position of every living entity. Okay, thank you, everyone. So, um, again, this is verse or Canto 3, chapter 23, verse 43. Um, so before we dive right into it, just to give some context, this chapter is called Devahuti's Lamentation. Um, so why is she lamenting? Just to give some background behind that. Um, so Devahuti was the daughter of Swambhavu Manu, and so she had been, she had been serving him after they got, they got married. They were arranged. They were married together, and for the first, so many part of the years of their marriage, she just served him. She helped him in whatever yogic practices that he was practicing. And so, as she was serving him, she became emaciated. She became weak. She was doing so much work, in terms of around uh, helping him with his yogic practices and achieving whatever devotion that he was practicing towards. The Kardama Muni, that's her husband. And so, yeah, after serving for a long time, the exact words that are used is she grew weak and emaciated due to her religious observances. She was very, very religious in serving him. But after so many years of serving him, she asked, my dear husband, I know that you've achieved perfection, Kardama Muni. You've done all these mystic yogic practices. You've almost become infallible at this point. Um, you're under the protection of Yoga Maya, but you had promised me that at one point, at some point, um, we can have kids, and we can, have kids, and we can have a normal family life, right? Right now, just, I've been serving you, and I've grown weak, but at one point, you promised me that we could have a normal family and have kids and expand our family. So she had these desires to be fulfilled, to enjoy a normal family, somewhat material life. And so Kardama Muni, you know, um, says, okay, yeah, that you've helped me in my mystic practices and become a very sincere devotee. Um, let me fulfill your desires now. And so he creates this whole this mansion, this huge house. He creates this traveling ship, which is where he takes her this verse and shows her all the planets in the world. um, and he basically gives her a dip in the water of what it's meant to be like, having what it's meant to live like a normal material family life. And then they go on to create kids, and that's what the rest of the verses explain, right? And she she's all of a sudden dressed nicely. She builds her castle. She gets sort of all these treatments that she didn't have in the beginning of her marriage, and now she's getting all of that. And so that is the place where we are in this chapter. um Devotees just said, please fulfill my desires, and uh, let me have a family life. And so that's what Kardamini Muni is starting to fulfill. And he begins doing that by, showing her all around the universe and giving her an experience of what is out there. So that's the background context. So in this specific verse, um, it's described that he shows the globe of the universe and the many, many wonders. And the specific term that's used to describe that is Bahu Ascharyam, full of many wonders. And so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is sort of expanding on uh, like the supremacy of the Lord and specifically the inconceivable energy of the Lord. He's talking about the different planets that are distributed all over the universe in 8 different directions. He's talking about how each and every single planet has its own particular, climates, different types of inhabitants that live on that planet. They have their own way of functioning, their own different seasons, and uh, by God's grace, each planet is differently has different wonderful features. And these are just the 8 planets that we're aware of, right? Like that. That's what's in this solar system. And that's what's perhaps in this uh, galaxy that we know of. But there's many, many more galaxies. And I wanted to show this diagram to just to get a glimpse of if folks are able to see my screen. But I'm sure all of us have seen this very famous picture of the Vedic uh, of the one universe, right? And we only know about the Earth and the 8 different planets, but as we have seen, there's the Garbhodakshay Ocean, there's the lower planets that you don't see in a solar system, but they exist, right? Um, and then there's the higher planets, again, that we don't see of. Um, and this diagram I've heard is just a summarized version of it. There's like many, many details if you go into Vedic cosmology, something that I don't have any knowledge of, but this is just like a summarized version, so is what I hear. And then there's the upper planets. There's the Garbhodaksha Vishnu potency. Um, there's like the different coverings, earth, water, fire, air, ether, as you extend out. And then there's a whole science of how you go between planets, depending on what you think of at the time of death, depending on what kind of body you are in that point of life. And so, like Krishna's uh, potency is extremely vast, and we only know what the scientists have told us so far. Um, in fact, there's been a lot of like recent discussion about something called UFOs. UFO stands for unidentified object flying in the air. So when scientists see things flying in the air that they're not able to identify, they have these huge research projects, and they've been finding in their research types of inhabitants or entities that are not humans or animals. They're like unidentified. They have different organs that they're finding. Um, and so there's a whole like department within the US government that studies what's out there at the planets, what's flying over us. And what's interesting is that in the Bhagavatam, uh, there's already some indication of like the different things that are out there and how vast it is. But of course, our scientists are trying to understand the vastness of that. Um, but yeah, we know a very little glimpse of it, and so I thought it would be good to just appreciate um, the Lord's the Lord's potency that um, we we barely are sort of aware of at this point. So that's the first part that Cardinal does. He takes his wife and shows her all these different planets, all the different universes, galaxies, and gives her a glimpse of that, just to appreciate what's out there. And the second purpose that he wanted to show her is because she asked to also um, enjoy or have a bodily union. So he's he's giving her that. He's, taking her on a ride, if you will, of the things that are out there, just she can sort of see all that. The next few points that Srila Prabhupada makes is um, Kardama Muni sort of uh, breaks the stereotype of a typical yogi, right? So a typical yogi, as we have maybe learned about or seen, is someone that's sitting as an hermitage, in a very austere fashion, um, has very limited things. But here, Kardama Muni has a mystic power to go everywhere. He he creates this castle, this opulence. He takes her, across everywhere in the universe. And so Prabhupada's talking about how Kardama Muni is not the typical yogi who's just sitting and practicing. He's sort of breaking that mold. And the perception that people have is that a yogi is someone that is of that stereotype. But it's being shown that Kardama Muni is actually someone that could do much more than just sitting in one place and meditate. And Prabhupada gives another example of Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni was another person who could travel all over the universe and was extremely powerful in what he could do. And so Prabhupada is saying that a perfect yogi can do that. He can go and travel and uh, not be sitting in one place. And there's more examples of this in the Vedic scripture. Narada Muni is another one that um, he's a Muni, but he can do so much. He can read other people's minds. He knows before what's about to happen, where the situation is going to go, and he shows up at that location. He doesn't stay at one place for more than 3 days. He's able to go on the lower planets and the higher planets. And so again, Prabhupada is just breaking the stereotypical perception of a yogi that um, we see, and it was probably growing back in the 70s also at that time. On the flip side, Prabhupada is also making the point that, that a perfect yogi can maybe do all of this travel and show all these mystic powers, but a perfect yogi is one still who remains devoted to Lord Krishna. So he's not someone who can do all these mystic things and is not a devotee of Krishna. So he's also making this point that Kardama Muni uh, is, Kardama Muni is not Krishna himself, but uh, he still, even though he had all these mystic powers, he remained a devotee of the Lord, and that is the real position of every living entity. So that's the point that the last point that Prabhupada is making in this purport. So Prabhupada's talked about the inconceivable potency. He's talked about what it means to be a perfect yogi, what the stereotype is, and how we shouldn't abide by that in particular. And again, this term Prabhupada talks about is Bahu Ascharya, like, which literally means wonders, full of many wonders, he says. And when I first read this, uh, two things popped into my mind. One was like Lord Krishna has these unlimited and conceivable potencies that we're not even aware of. And the second part that it sort of um, it sparked a thing in my head was Krishna's relationship with his devotees. He does some of the most inconceivable things with his devotees that we can't understand. Like we're surprised, ashcharyakit. Like we're just shocked when it happens. And so it's a tangential point, but um, the story that comes to my mind was Bhishma's passing, because it was very inconceivable in the way it was done. It was not something you could just imagine as being normal, as like a very normal event. It was very inconceivable in the way it was done, Lord Bhishma Dev's passing. And to me, that's a metaphor into understanding the inconceivable potency of Krishna, like the different planets that he has. He also has a very ununderstandable relationship with his devotees. And so it, it, um, it, it's almost described that if you look at that image of Bhishma Dev who was laying in a bed of arrows, it's actually a very inconceivable image. He's got arrows through his body. He was Bhishma Dev asked uh, Arjuna to put arrows through his body. And he's lying in there on there for days and days. It's not just the arrows go through and Vishnu passes away. That's it. It's days and it's only like enlightened people can understand even what that was, that whole sort of pastime. So it begins with the fact that first of all, Bhishma Dev decided to fight on the side of Duryodhana. Um, And that's all often a controversial point. Why did Bhishma Dev pick to fight on the side of Duryodhana? Again, a very inconceivable decision that many acharyas try to explain. Why did Bhishma Dev pick the side of Duryodhana? One um, uh, and while Duryodhana is given uh, he has a perception of being very bad or on the side of the enemies. He's also an excellent organizer, an excellent manager. Like if it's said that Duryodhana was one of the smartest people, one of the most religious people actually as well. He ran his kingdom in a very thoughtful manner and very efficiently. He was like one of the best executives, right? That ran his army and his organizations. And in that way, Duryodhana was very tactical in getting the right people on his side of the army. And he tried to get Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev didn't come and join Duryodhana because Duryodhana. Bhishma Dev um, had a different plan. And so but Duryodhana was very tactical in getting people to join his side of the army. And even though Yudhishthira was the most qualified person, like Bhishma Dev could have joined Yudhishthira's army, but uh, he knew that it was better for him to go on the Kaurava side. And Bhishma Dev even knew the end result of the war of Kurukshetra. He knew where the war was going to go. He also knew when the whole gambling match was happening, the cheating match that was happening between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the dice rolling match. He knew the Pandavas would lose, and he knew that they would get banished to the forest. Bhishma Dev watched the disrobing of Draupadi, so he knew all these things that were happening. Externally, it was said that that Bhishma Dev helped or joined Duryodhana's side on the side of the army was so he can be financially maintained. But that's not true. That's not why Bhishma Dev wasn't short of money. That's not why he joined Duryodhana's side. But the reason he really joined was Bhishma Dev knew that he knew the plan of the Lord. Uh, the fact that Duryodhana chose Krishna's army and Krishna himself went to Arjuna, he knew that the Kauravas were going to lose. And um, he knew that he would be on the losing side. And he wanted to leave this material world. Bhishma Dev wanted to leave this material world. And he felt this is the fastest way to do that. Let me be on the other side. The the Pandavas will win. And this would be the best way for me to see Krishna facing from the other side. And this is why I'll choose the Kaurava side. And so, um, and it's also said that Bhishma Dev had the ability to destroy the Pandavas single-handedly. Like there was a war between two sides, but Bhishma Dev was so powerful that he could have defeated the Pandavas just by himself. But um, when it came to the war itself, Bhishma Dev was powerfully shooting arrows to the Pandavas, and nothing was working. Um, in terms of the Pandavas being able to defend themselves. Bhishma he kept shooting arrows, and the Pandavas didn't know what to do. And so finally, the Pandavas went to Krishna and asked him, "What do we do?" Like Bhishma Dev is just sending unlimited arrows at us, and we don't know what to do. And so Krishna said, you have to go ask him. You have to ask him what to do. You have to ask Bhishma Dev. And so Pandavas went to Bhishma Dev and asked him, like, how do we defeat you? How do we win over you? And Bhishma Dev was excited to hear this. He was like, yes, finally someone's asking about how I can leave this material world. And so he tells them what to do. He says, bring Shikhandi in front of me, uh, and have him bring Shikhandi in front of me, and then have Arjuna shoot arrows in me. And so Shikhandi, so Pandavas do the whole thing, right? They bring Shikhandi in front of Bhishma Dev, and then Arjuna shoots arrows through him. Multiple, and he tells them, you have to send all the arrows through me, multiple arrows of them. And so that's it. That's what started happening. Arjuna started shooting the arrows in Bhishma Dev, and he piled them up, and he lied down, and he stayed alive for multiple days, watching the war happen in front of his eyes while he's lying in the bed of arrows. And so Krishna knew that Bhishma was waiting. Bhishma was waiting for Krishna to show up so Krishna could see um, Krishna could see Bhishma Dev, and then only would Bhishma Dev pass away. So just think of this image of one of the most senior devotees lying in a bed of arrows. He's happy, yet his body's struggling. He's waiting to see Krishna. He's seeing the war. It's a very atypical situation. It's a very inconceivable situation. But finally, Krishna shows up. He shows up, and then of course we know how the passing away of then and Lord Vishnu then he passes his body. And there's often this, when this Bhishma pastime is discussed, there's this common criticism that comes up, which is, you take someone like Bhishma Dev and you look at his passing. He died, after being in part of the war and on these bed of arrows. Yet he was a sincere devotee, and so the criticism that comes up is whether you're a devotee or you're not a devotee, you're going to face these material challenges of death. Your body's going to become frail. You're going to face these challenges. And the devotees, are, and the devotees sort of typically don't partake in drinking enjoyment. Instead, they perform Harinam Yagya. And so the criticism that comes up is, why should, you know, like, what's the difference? A devotee is going to suffer, a non-devotee is going to suffer. Why should a devotee stop enjoying? That's the common criticism that comes up, typically. And so, um, and that's obviously a whole different discussion to be had. But Lord Krishna says, just because you're devoted doesn't mean you won't suffer. Bhishma Dev had its path as well. But again, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is, if you look at that pastime, it's not meant to be a ABCD of something that we can understand easily. It's very inconceivable, just like how we cannot understand the planets that are out there. And so there's, like, just like that, there's many inconceivable pastimes of the Lord that are not kind of visible to our eyes or not very understandable by our comprehension, but are inconceivable in nature and requires understanding Krishna to understand those pastimes. Why did Krishna let Bhishma Dev pass the way he did? Or why did uh, the other pastimes happen the way they did? It's inconceivable. And the only way we can do that is by trying to understand Krishna and his devotees. Bahu Ashcharya. So that was the main sort of points that I wanted to cover. Um, I'll stop here to see if devotees wanted to add any comments. Anything devotees wanted to add?
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna Mataji.
I was wondering, like Bhishmastami is coming up next month, and uh, I want to find out the timeline of Kurukshetra. Is this the time that the war is going on around?
I don't know, Mataji. I don't know the.
Because we usually celebrate Bhishmastami in the next month, right? And the
Yeah.
Bhishma Ekadasi and everything.
Yeah, I don't know if any other devotees know the timeline of the Kurukshetra war, whether it was happening in this time frame. I'm not sure.
Because it was right before Bhishma Deva passes away, and
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Krishna.
not aware.
Wonderful, wonderful class, Prabhuji. You are explaining so nicely about Padma Muni and how he's trying to fulfill his wife's desires and everything. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much. Nice class. So I was thinking he did travel across the universe and came back to his cottage. I mean, that's what it says, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, and also, of course, the whole past time, he was the one who wanted to get married, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it was a need to have children based on his son Brahma's instructions.
yeah, yeah,
But then he was kind of completely out. I mean, he was not even looking for that. But they were who they
yeah.
asked, and then he does all this. This thing. And also Bhishma Dev's pastime that you brought it up. I mean, I mean, Krishna directly doesn't tell. So get secondly, and then we will be able to, he
Yeah.
will take care of Bhishma Dev. He'll go and ask. I mean, it's surprising, right? In the modern world, I mean, people won't ask the enemy to see how can I kill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the fact is that the the Kurukshetra war would ended when the sun would go down, right?
Yes.
And then they would all go back to their camps and sit in a like they would rest. It's all like, and they weren't allowed to fight after that time. And that's when the Pandavas approached Bhishma and said, "Hey, how do we kill you?" Yeah.
Thank you. Regarding that question Mataji asked, I think this is the time because Gita Jayanti happened a few days ago. So that's when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. So this is the time war happens. I think, I mean, Makara Sankranti is the day, I know Bhishmashtami is the other one. Makara Sankranti is the day sun moves to the northern hemisphere. After that, Bhishma Dev passes away. So that's when the Bhishmashtami also comes. So this is the time, Mataji, I think, if I war happens. So because Gita Jayanti is the one that day Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna.
Yeah, yeah, Prabhuji. So the war was only for 18 days, right?
Yes, but Bhishma Dev did not leave immediately, right? He stayed on the bed of
Yeah,
earth
yeah.
for.
I'm thinking about when the war was started on the Gita Jayanti day, and it is around like 2 months' time until the Bhishma Ashtami, and so it is not a 2-3 weeks gap
No, no, he
between the.
stayed some 45 days or something because he waits for the sun moves to the northern
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hemisphere.
He waited.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bhishma Dev waited, but the war started mainly on the day of Gita Jayanti, as we.
That's how we see, but somewhere I heard that it's third day or something, but I don't know. I mean,
Okay, okay.
so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
first day, but it's not
yeah.
because that's how we read from Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Prabhuji.
First
Yeah.
day because just before the war started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it
Hare
doesn't matter.
Krishna.
I think
Yeah.
there is some kind of, I think Maharaj was, somebody was asking that question to Maharaj, Prabhupada
Mm.
Maharaj. I think there is not much clarity in the number of days because it was not matching. I
Mm.
think
Yeah,
exactly
that's
not
what I
matching,
say.
but I mean
Yeah, it
very,
is.
very close, but not exactly
Mm.
matching because I think
Mm.
I need to see Mataji.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is, but it's this is the time what happens because after this Bhisham Dev passes away, Gita Jayanti happened few days ago.
Mm. Yeah. Father-in-law actually passed away on the Bhishma Ashtami day. So we think about that. And why there is Bhishma Ashtami and Bhishma Ekadasi. Which day did he pass away? Is it Ashtami day or the Ekadasi day? So someone, the Brahmin said that it took a while for him to leave his soul also because it is connected so much to the. It started on. For us, it is a split of second to leave the body, the soul, and death happens just like that. And for him, it is not the same way. It took a while for his body to, the soul to depart from the body also from Ashtami to the Ekadasi day.
That I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. There was just one discussion question I did want to get devotees' thoughts on, and we can end after that. Is this? this point, Kardama Muni, he practiced the sincere Krishna consciousness. Then him and Devahuti, quote unquote, enjoyed for many, many years. And then Kardama Muni and Devahuti go back to Godhead eventually. You take the pastime of, Ajamil, or there's other personalities in Bhagavatam that enjoy for thousands and 10,000s of years, then become, then again go back to Krishna consciousness, and then they go back to Godhead. And then there's the other side of devotees who don't enjoy, they're always practicing, and they go back to Krishna. And so, the question that comes up is, why is it bad to enjoy if you can still go back to Krishna by by,
Mm.
that's because you read so many personalities in Bhagavatam that are either on one of the two sides. Enjoy
Mhm.
Krishna, go back to Godhead, or just are devotees and go back to Krishna. So I was curious if devotees had any thoughts on that.
We're just reading about the story of Yayati Prabhuji, the same thing. He enjoyed a lot and finally he
Yeah,
got the realization.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's not necessarily explained. Haridvani, were you going to say something? Yeah.
Mhm. Hare Krishna. So, if recently, I think in one of the classes, somebody asked Rumpal Maharaj about this question, especially about Yayati. So, what is the significance of personalities like Yayati to be in there? Um, and might be paraphrasing Maharaj, but in one sense, the personalities of Yayati are there to kind of present the other side, saying that irrespective of whatever you do, ultimately, without associating with devotees and taking shelter of a spiritual master, you cannot achieve the perfection in Krishna consciousness. So you might be following, practicing any kind of religious principles and whatnot, but ultimately, what takes you to the ultimate shelter of Krishna's lotus feet is the association of devotees and taking shelter of Guru. So that in that way, these examples in Bhagavatam are kind of explainable. But with respect to the question of enjoyment versus, for lack of better term, getting emaciated like Mother Devoti is when so when we kind of hear the word of enjoyment, we kind of hear with the connotation of how we understand it. Like as you explained about Hajamila. So when we see as enjoyment, we kind of see that aspect of Ajamila's story where he has given up his duties of Krishna consciousness. He has given up his duties as a son. He has given up his duties as a husband and as a father, and was just going on a merry-round. So that is what usually comes into our mind when we say of enjoyment. But there is also this. If all of us know about this story of Pundarik Vidyanidhi in Chaitanya Charitamrita, who was this affluent person who was sitting. So Gadadhar Pandit had. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi was considered as one of the topmost Vaishnavas during the time of Mahaprabhu, and he was a kind of kingly Vaishya. But Gadadhar Pandit, who was into this category of emaciated brahmachari, who was strict into these austere principles, at some point, Mahaprabhu understood that there was pride that was getting built in the heart of Gadadhar Pandit just because of the austerities that he was performing. So Mahaprabhu then advises him, I think it's better that you go and associate or meet Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And then Gadadhar Pandit walks into the assembly where Pundarik Vidyanidhi is there, and Pundarik Vidyanidhi is sitting on this high chair with these drinks, and then there's a lot of like the quote unquote enjoyment that we hear of. And then this verse of Ho Bakiyam is kind of told. I don't know if it is Gadadhar. So Gadadhar then immediately kind of starts getting into this judgment mode where, oh, what kind of devotee is he? Why did Mahaprabhu ask me to go there? I'm this strict brahmachari. What is the point in getting into this materialistic attitude and all of that? But then this verse, I don't know it suddenly kind of Pundarik Vidyanidhi remembers, or somebody recites this verse of how Bakiyam Stanakala Kutam, where it's kind of glorified of Krishna, where regarding Putana, and then immediately gets into an ecstatic mode, starts trembling, and then Gadadhar Pandit realizes that in his heart he is still a devotee. Externally, whatever he may be, in his heart he is still a devotee. So as long as there is place for that. So even if we also take the example of Maharaj Prataparudra, just because Mahaprabhu didn't meet with him to set an example as a sannyasi that I don't want to meet you, but even after meeting Mahaprabhu, it's not that Maharaj Prataparudra gave up his kingdom, became a beggar, or nothing of that. His heart got transformed. He was always a Vaishnava, but as an etiquette, Mahaprabhu didn't meet him. So there is place for us as being in the ashrams that we are in. There is. It's not that we should be performing Krishna consciousness in this quote unquote suffering way. So it's joyful, but into the mode of joyful, it should not be a point of that we become like Ajamila, and we cannot just replicate what Pundarik Vidyanidhi is doing. So it's finding that balance and making sure that you're performing, and performing your devotional service, not at the end of the day, it should not be in a grudge way, as Prabhupada says. um, Eventually the deity will become from Vigraha to Galagraha. So the Krishna consciousness should also not become like a Galagraha where it became like a burden and we are performing our just chanting or just coming to temple in a grudge mode. If so, I kind of see it as finding that balance where there is this the aspect of austerity is also there, but then there is that aspect of relishing your life. So that's kind of my standpoint.
That's really nice, Ruru. I like the story of Pundarik Vidyanidhi and Maharaj King Prataparudra, and then how you tied it back to what your viewpoint is. That's nice. Thank you. Okay, I think we can, no other points, we can end here. But this is often a question that, comes up, and I wanted to just get devotees' viewpoint, especially in the context of Kardama Muni and Devahuti. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Hare Krishna.